Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com, CardHoarder.com, Alter Sleeves, as well as Twitch subscribers and Patreon supporters just like you. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys.
Reuben Bressler.
Hey, how's it going?
Everything is lovely, and we kick it off with our first pick and the giveaway.
Before you do that, I'm looking at our live stream, and I'm like in a box. What is happening on the live stream?
You're in a box? I see you.
Look at the live stream for me.
I see it.
You look like
does it look fine to everybody else?
I mean, you're a little close.
Your head is kind of big.
Yeah, I think I could imagine maybe you have a...
Maybe there's something wrong with my stream of it. It looked like there was a tiny stream inside of the stream.
I went the wrong direction.
I would refresh the page.
There we go. It works now.
I think you're doing okay. All right. Now we're going to kick it off with our first pick in the giveaway. Get your chance at a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com by typing !raffle in the chat. But subscribe first to get 2 chances to win. And don't forget our raid at the end of the show to support a member of the community. Enter your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. That is thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And our first pick this week, we're going to talk about some Magic cards because they're new and we like them and they're fun. So we all chose 3 that we're going to talk about, and then we'll move on from there. Bloodthirsty Adversary is my first card. This is a cycle of 2-mana creature mythics, and you know they're going to be terrible cards, right? They're just going to be complete trash, unplayable garbo.
Right.
So Bloodthirsty Adversary is a red and generic mana for a 2/2 mythic vampire with haste. It enters the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay a red and 2 generic mana any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, you put that many +1/+1 counters on Bloodthirsty Adversary, then exile up to that many target instant and or sorcery cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard and copy them. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana costs. Holy cow. Goblin Dark Dwellers.
Words.
Goblin Dark Dwellers exist, yes, but Goblin Dark Dwellers couldn't just keep firing if you just kept blinking it and have more mana to make more of that stuff happen. So blinking it and pay 6, blinking it and pay 9, stuff like that. This is where you get to kind of commander territory. But in terms of standard constructed, good old fashioned 2 mana smashy, this card is fantastic.
Yeah, it does say enter the battlefield. So blinks or take it from the graveyard back onto the battlefield, right. Which there's a lot when it only costs 2 mana. You're going to get a ton of value. I love cards that are curve filling, and this is a beautiful 2-drop for 2, which is just fine on its own and limited. And then the later you draw them in the game, they give you this really nice bonus, which is just huge. I mean, in Constructed, it's the same, but it allows you to have so much flexibility, which makes all of your draws so much smoother.
Curve filler is definitely the operative term here. These are 5 of probably the 5 best Kavu Titans that have ever been printed.
Yep.
You play them on turn 2, and you're okay with it. You play them on turn 5, and you're okay with it. These you can actually just play on turn 8, I guess, since that's what the life we're living now. This one in particular, you're playing in your red decks. You're playing in your decks that are already going to have your lightning strikes and things like that in them. So you're happy to play a 2/2 with haste. You're happy to play a 3/3 with haste that flashes back a lightning bolt.
Right. This is one of those times where, it's important that it's not multi-kicker. Yes, it's multi-kicker, but it's not multi-kicker because that only triggers 1 time while you're casting it. This thing can be ephemerated. This thing can be Restoration Angel. This thing can be reanimated and trigger. It's going to trigger every time it enters the battlefield. And these cards are bananas.
I'm interested to see if this cycle makes Teleportation Circle a thing because Teleportation Circle costs 4.
Yeah.
So you play this on 2, circle on 4, and then the next turn you've got your 5 mana, and most of them are 2 mana creatures with 3 mana kickers.
Right.
So I'm interested to see if that, or in some of them, you only have 2 mana as extra kickers. So I'm interested to see if that means anything.
Yeah. And
if you're not having to cast it, if you're hitting it with a teleportation circle, then on your turn 6, you're actually doing it twice, right? Which is really, really valuable.
Yeah. These cards have the ability to just make blinking effects really, really interesting, which I appreciate. I like that there's no multi-kicker here. I appreciate that. That's cool and more interesting to me. My second card here I wanted to talk about was Moonveil Region. Speaking of dumb red mythics, Moonville Region is red and 3 generic mana for a 4/4 mythic dragon. Has flying, of course, and whenever you cast a spell, you may discard your hand, and if you do, draw a card for each of that spell's colors. When Moonveil Regent dies, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. This is a lot. It does, first of all, on rate, it's fantastic. 4 mana, 4/4 flying, okay. Expressive Iteration is a card, is amazing. If it is the last card that you play out of your hand, the trigger goes in the stack, you discard your empty hand, draw 2, and then Expressive Iteration goes off. That's amazing. That interaction alone, to me, says this is going to be a monster in Standard. Like, just that.
Yeah, definitely going to be a really nice top end for the like mono red aggression decks, just because by the time you play this or a turn later, you're out of cards, and then this is just going to be a really amazing effect to have, I think.
Yeah. This is a 4/4 for 4, which is huge. They gave it to Kibler. Obviously, it's a dragon, but they usually give him good dragons, like tournament playable dragons, not just, giant idiots. The being 4 mana is a big deal, because if it was 5 mana, it would never see any play, because Goldspan Dragon is still going to be in the format. Right. This alongside of Goldspan Dragon is huge, because it allows you, because if you're in let's say you're in a mono red deck, you don't need to be. In fact, if you're playing multicolored spells, this card gets better. But if you're in a mono red deck, you can get this out and then play Goldspan Dragon and immediately draw another card. Not to mention, if this is alongside Jasper Sentinel and Magda, sort of getting this out on turn 3. It's possible to get this out on turn. No, it's not possible to get this out on turn 2. It's possible to get this out on turn 3.
Right.
Alongside multicolored cards and things like that.
If you imagine saying that in your mono red deck, you bolt something, you discard your hand, which is a mountain or whatever, and then you just draw a card. You're able to essentially sort of cycle through your deck faster just by playing your spells, which when you're just playing the only card in your hand, you're just getting free cards out of it. Like, that's terrific.
Yeah, this card looks to me a lot like the blue-red deck with the other drakes and stuff that like really tend to cycle through a lot of things very quickly with like spells like Opt and stuff. And they do sometimes run out of cards. And then this is just like a built-in card draw that's also just a huge threat. So I think there's nothing not to like about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of stuff with Disturb and Flashback. This would be great with Madness. There's so much good to talk about with this card.
Well, speaking of good to talk about, we have my third and final card. This card is super sweet. It harkens back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, it's freaky and crazy. This is called the Meathook Massacre, with a giant dismembered hand right there in front of you saying what's up. This card is a 2 black and X generic mana mythic legendary enchantment. We don't get a lot of those. When the Meathook Massacre enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. And whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you gain 1 life. Okay. This thing has the ability to just swing games all over the place. This seems good in both like any control deck that wants to get a handle on things or
get it because there's a hand
or the aristocrat style decks that want all these really cool triggers and aren't necessarily looking for something like that. But it would be nice when your trigger happy card turns into the board wipe that saved you.
Yeah, this card's incredibly good. I mean, just by itself, it's a Black Sun Zenith, right? It's a Black Wrath, modular Wrath that has a Blood Artist attached to it. Now, it's not exactly a Blood Artist and it's not exactly a Black Sun Zenith, but it's doing both things at the same time. Not to mention the fact that it's a permanent that you can return to your hand and use again. It's an incredibly potent card. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this before. And it's pretty scary to consider having access to a Wrath in an Aristocrats deck, which is pretty cool.
Like the art blows me away. Holy smokes, this art is one of the creepiest arts. Like they do, the ghouls and the things, but like this for some reason kind of just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know.
On a scale from 0 to meteoric, neutron bomb, how good is this in limited? Like this is bananas, right? Like number one thing I want to open and sealed, please.
Wraths are always good in limited.
And the way this one is worded,
certainly no joke.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a really good card. It's going to be better than... and the weird thing is like the last set had like no wraths. The only like pseudo wrath was just like unplayable in my opinion. And then the one before that, there was like 7 because of all the mystical archive cards. So now I'm really curious to see once this entire set's spoiled, what that's going to look like. I think this card will be better the wider the format is, not so much the taller it is. We're going to have to see. I'm thinking with a Werewolves, it might not be quite enough, but if it's anything like the last Innistrad with a lot of spirit tokens and things like that, it'll really, really shine.
It's wild when you, and particularly if you've played Innistrad sets before, in that exactly what you just said was that, if there's a bunch of tokens and they're all 2/2s and they're X2s and they're X3s maybe, that's fine. But like werewolves are big, man. They're 5/4, 6/5, 6/6s. Like these things are ginormous. And so this card like looks cool, but sometimes it might be what you play after combat just to try to finish them off because they're ginormous.
Even the like blood artist side of the card is also going to depend on just how wide the format is.
Yeah.
All right. So, Nerd Girl, what is your first card?
So you guys did all the flashy, fancy things that, I will never get to play with.
Sure you
but
will.
I decided to take the other side of it and I picked a bunch of things that I'm going to get to play with every single day. So a lot of signpost uncommons basically, and the first one was the Bladestitched. It is a 2/3 for 2, which is a great rate. I'm already happy about it.
There you go.
It is a zombie soldier, and other zombies get +1/+0. Now we don't have the rest of the set spoiled yet, so I'm not 100% sure how easy this is going to be, but I know it's going to be a fun deck that I'm looking forward to playing.
Yeah, this card is sweet.
Card's insane. 2/3 for 2. I mean, you get Elvish Warrior stats that pump the rest of your team. Make your decayed zombies, lightning bolt people. I mean, definition of a signpost uncommon for sure.
Only in Innistrad does black blue get the green creature stats of 2 mana 2/3s, and all of your decayed zombies are now 3/2s. Like this card is dope. This card seems super, super good. All right, what's your second?
Oops.
Oopsies.
I wasn't there.
Live television, everyone.
Live television, yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip the second one because I know where the other one. Is.
No problem. Any order's
So
fine.
that's the Nebelgast Intruder.
Yeah.
It is a 3 mana 2/3 flyer with flash. When it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature and opponent controls gets -2, -0 until end of turn. This is a mechanic we've seen a lot that we've used in Limited, and they ranged from, good minus to unplayable. And I think this is the best one we've had yet. This is what I like to see in Limited. It really helps with like racing situations. It doubles as a combat trick, and a 2/3 flyer for 3 is a decent rate that can end a game on its own.
A 2/1 flyer.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. But a 2/1 flyer for 3 mana flash flying, best Windrake ever. Some stats.
Well, it's not even a Windrake. This is the best fairy duelist ever.
Okay,
yes.
That's fair.
And I loved fairy duelist in what was that, Guilds, or was it Ravnica Allegiance? One of those sets.
Okay.
And I love this effect. I've played a lot of the 3-drop Linvala in Brawl, and I have as many of those stupid tiny rogues that do this as I can shove into my deck together. They make the first 2 turns of your Limited deck absolutely astronomical in your favor. And 2 power is a huge deal for one of those cards, because pretty much everything you're playing on turn 1 and 2 is going to have 1 and 2 power. And if you can get this thing down in the middle of combat, you're trading up. So this is a pump spell with a Windrake attached to it.
Yeah, it's one more mana than what the Fairy Duelist was, but it's also more of a threat on its own. So if you're not getting any of that trading value, you're actually still fine with it. It's kind of good on its own without that special ability. And the flash means, maybe you're just playing it to have like basically a haste attacker with some evasion. I think it's going to be a really fun card, and I'm looking forward to playing as many of them in all of my blue decks as I can.
And it's the arena pet. It's the pet you get for pre-ordering.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
oh, what cool? A cutie!
He's just a cute little thing. Oh my god, he's holding up a little lamp with his little, like, I don't know.
Yeah, little soul lantern.
Little chain or whatever. It's adorable.
Oh, his hands are chains!
His hands are chains! He's a chainy hands boy! He's a chainy boy!
He's a good boy.
What a good boy.
That's fantastic. What's your second/third card?
Morbid Opportunist. It is a 1/3 for 3, 2 and a black. So it's a little bit high on the stats there. But whenever one or more creatures die, draw a card. This triggers only once per turn. It doesn't specify your creature, so removal is going to be very good, where you get to like just remove something and then redraw your card. It's just going to make everything so much better. You can also play it post-combat after they've traded and then get you your card back and something they were like, maybe they could have just taken one, but then they chose to block or trade. And, it makes all of your maybe tokens get to turn into redraws if you want to just throw them under a bus if you need to. It's got a lot of flexibility. It's got a ton of card value, and it's going to be a staple in all of the limited filler spots.
Yeah. You kill that immediately. I don't care what else they have. Yeah. They have a giant werewolf over there looking scary. You kill this thing. This thing makes combat like impossible. Like, I don't want to ever attack into you when you have this card. Like, it's ridiculous.
It triggers on each turn. Yeah. So it's, I love Death Reap Ritual, which is the 3/black 4-mana Morbid enchantment that does this. This is a 3-mana monocolored creature that does that. Oh, yeah. And it does it on your opponent's turn. This card's insane.
This card's nuts, man.
3 toughness is very good. This is like, it's going to remind me of like Skullport Merchant, I think.
A little bit. It's got some of those shades, but this seems way better. You have to pay no mana. No mana. It just hangs out. Like, this is the number one thing to kill in Limited that I can imagine playing against. Like,
for sure.
I would rather you have 2 of each of the other 2 cards than have to play against this one card, because this scares me.
And I love that you're going to be wasting your premium removal on my uncommon 3-drop that's just a 1/3, leaving the door wide open for my giant werewolf to just smack you in the face, right? Exactly. Like, it puts you in a position where like you just possibly can't have enough removal, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's just a lot. And it sucks because I still think that's the right play, but that doesn't make that werewolf beating me feel any better.
Yep.
Like, goodness. Reuben, what's your first card, buddy?
So, they gave us a new declaration in stone in this set, and its name is Fateful Absence. Fateful Absence is a colorless and a white for an instant this time. Destroy target creature or planeswalker its controller investigates, which means they get a clue, artifact, token. Declaration in stone was a sorcery that did some other interesting stuff. It exiled things. It got rid of a bunch of tokens if you wanted to. This is instant speed. It's 2 mana, but it's destroy target creature or planeswalker for 2 mana. Go ahead and get your artifact that draws a card. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Right. This is really insanely good.
Nice Ugin.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more restricted just in Limited, just because the planeswalker side of it's not as relevant, right?
Right.
And the other thing is the creature has to be better than the average card in their deck, more or less. But I mean, it's still a removal you're always going to run. I could see there maybe being some more bomb uncommon creatures that I still might maybe take over this in general. Depends on how much removal there is in the format, but this is likely just a first pick.
Yep. This is like between this and the black mana, 2 mana, kill something, lose 2 life. These are some of the best removal spells of like all time. Like, this is Doomblade Clue. Like, Doomblade, get a clue. And it's this even better because it kills literally anything. Plus any planeswalker at any point. Yeah. A 2 mana answer to every planeswalker at instant speed. You can get all the clues all day if I get to go 5 mana to Fairy with his ability on the stack. Like, oh yeah, I mean, this card is sick, man. But just in terms of what it opens up as options for removal is huge. Part of me says that this is going to, because the removal is so good, right? That black mana removal is so good. This is so good that they can really push the threats, because as long as you got really good answers, your threat can look really scary. But as long as I can answer it with something like this, the format's okay.
Yeah. And the big, I mean, the headliner is that you can put this in white weenie, right? Yeah. Like, you can put this in green-white aggro. We have access to, the black, whatever the black removal spell du jour is,
right?
If we're playing black mana.
Right.
But this lets you just play 1-drop 2/1, Knight of the White Orchid, Benelish Marshal, and then you just have destroy target creature or planeswalker without doing anything messed up to your mana.
That's amazing.
That's insane. It's going to really be dependent on what the aggressive white deck and, green base decks are going to have access to, but it seems amazing.
In Historic, this card, I can't. To have a mono white card that says destroy target creature, and the downside is not like they draw 2 cards or something ridiculous. It's no, they have to pay mana in order to sacrifice this thing and then maybe get a card later, taking their tempo away. Right. Oh my God, this card is fantastic. What's your next one?
All right, my next card is on my list. I don't really care what this card does so much, because I love the name, and I love its other name, and it makes me happy because they named a card Hostel. Oh my gosh. Hostel taps to add a colorless to your mana pool, and then it's pay a colorless and tap and sacrifice a creature, put a soul counter on Hostel. Then if there are 3 or more soul counters on it, remove those counters, transform it, then untap it, activate only as a sorcery, and it becomes the Creeping Inn. It's another pun,
because it's creeping.
It becomes a black artifact creature, horror construct.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it attacks, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creature cards exiled with Creeping Inn. So it gets the soul counters. Mm-hmm. And then it puts cards into your graveyard so that it creeps for 1, it creeps for 2, it creeps for 3. Also, it has pay 4 colorless, Creeping Inn phases out.
What? Why?
It protects itself.
What? I guess.
Yeah.
This is a mythic land? Really?
It protects it. It's a 3/7 that can't be wrathed.
As long as you keep 4 mana, you're going to play this in a control deck that's not really going to play enough creatures to sack to it. If you're playing an aggro deck, you don't care about a 3/7 for all things.
This is like the bore you to tears finisher for control, I think.
Yeah.
This is the...
Yes.
You would sacrifice tokens, right? You'd sacrifice little tokens you would make through various value plays and eventually get a 3/7 that kills them slowly.
Usually when you see this type of a mechanic on a land, I've seen a lot of control decks where they're only finishing win con after they've bored you to death is a land, but it doesn't have this weird sacrifice 3 other things option on it because you don't normally have those.
Right.
So I think this is going to be weaker than what we normally see in that particular play. As far as limited goes, if I'm in an exactly 2-color deck, I'm probably still happy to run this just because it is at instant speed, so you can sack in response to removal or combat tricks or something like that. And eventually it's going to trigger. You're running between 12 and 17 creatures sometimes. And
you're going to end up with a lot of useless decay tokens. Right? We end up with what are we going to do with these extra 1/1 humans? Oh, well, we'll make a haunted house, I guess.
The zombies that when they attack or block, they die, you block in response. Yep. Boom. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Love it.
That's pretty cute, right? That's clever. I get that. This is, it's Earth in the Hitchhiker's Guide. It's mostly harmless if you put it into your, limited deck. It's fine. It's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. And if you get value out of it, high five. The whole thing, I love the name. Absolutely love it. The puns are terrific. I felt like it just got a little weird in what a mythic land does. 3/7?
Let me be very clear.
This
is not for any reason other than the names. The names are why this is on.
It has phasing?
Also, guys, chat's saying it's not instant. I read through it. I didn't see the sorcery speed text, but it appears I am wrong.
One more time. Oh, not that one. That one. Activate only as a sorcery. So that is correct. But you still have to sacrifice the decayed zombies at end of turn, so you do have your post-combat main phase that you can still use to sacrifice the zombies that will die anyway.
Does decay happen at end of turn?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sacrifice
it is less cute against removal and combat.
Tricky.
Which is sad.
But it's just first of all, it's a sack outlet. Second of all, it's very cheap to activate. And if you've got a bunch of extra garbage laying around, then, let's make a haunted house.
What's your third card?
Goodness, Reuben. Don't say sack outlet. We're all traumatized from the stupid sack from this current set. Let's take a break.
Which set? Wait,
the the D&D set, the best deck in Limited is the Rakdos Sacrifice deck.
Oh, it is.
Which is
That's
just
right. Yeah.
It's
running
way better than everything
rampant.
else. It's way better.
It's insane.
It's
The
way
win
higher.
rate is infinitely higher.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Whenever I see that treasure painter guy, I'm just the happiest kid in the candy
That
store.
card, that and the 1/4, again, the merchant.
Yeah, the merchant.
Oh my God.
My last card is, it's a lot. It's a lot of words.
It's a bunch.
And I need everyone to just like stick with me for the next hour and a half while I read what Ludovic Necrogenius does.
Here we
He's
go.
a legendary creature, human wizard. He's a 2/3 for a blue and a black. So we're already
Again.
like fine. We're already good.
Sure.
2/3 for 2. When Ludovic Necrogenius enters the battlefield or attacks, mill a card.
Okay.
All right. It's a weird thing, but sure. Pay X blue blue, black black, and exile X creature cards from your graveyard, transform Ludovic Necrogenius, X can't be 0, activate only as a sorcery. All right.
Then.
What are we doing when we're transforming? Well, we're transforming into Olag, Ludovic's Hubris, who is a blue and black legendary creature zombie. As this permanent transforms into Olag, Ludovic's Hubris, it becomes a copy of one of the exiled cards, except that its name is still Olag. It has base power and toughness of 4/4, and it's a blue and black legendary zombie in addition to its other types. Then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each card exiled in this way. So, minimum it's a 5/5. Because you have to have X can't be 0. If you happen to want to exile 5 other cards, you can make this a 9/9. And, oh, by the way, it copies one of those creatures that you've either milled or has died earlier in the game. Very strange, like, self-eternalization. Like, this is a Scarab God that's Scarab Godding itself.
Like, does this get the transform triggers of what it's copying? Right? Because it's transforming.
Because
like, because the card says.
So if I have a Huntmaster of the Fells in the graveyard.
Right, and this exiled it.
And this
and
exiled
you
it.
flipped
Do
it.
I get the as you transform it ability? It's a good question.
I don't know. And there's other cards like the white mythic thing that when it can't transform, you lose the game. But this can transform. So does it just transform back? Is that okay? Like, this is the type of card that I can only imagine, like, a programmer, like, crying at his desk slowly, like, just a little sobs of just, like, they gave me Ludovic. I told them I didn't want to. This card is so crazy. It's insane. You know, like, some guy had to swoop in and, like, you know, fix it at the last minute because it does such crazy stuff and some weird interactions. This is the exact type of card to have bugged out a million times in testing because, okay.
Sure.
It does a lot.
I mean, it has so much text. It does so many things. And like, I'm dreading having to write the set review on it. Just like,
There's so
it's
many
going to be like
words.
it's going to be 3 paragraphs of my thoughts on this thing because like explaining why something is good or bad takes more space than the actual text of what it does. So this is just going to be so hard to get through.
You know,
it's a lot of text.
The longer I play Magic, the longer I see cards and card designs and themes and then your mechanics or whatever, the less words you put on that card, the more impressed I am with your work. I just am. You put 3 paragraphs on a card, it can do 37 things. I don't care. But is it cool, thematic, interesting? Do I get it? Does it make sense? Is it powerful on the curve? Do I need to know all this other stuff to get it? No, man. Putting 100 words on each side doesn't make it a good card.
Yeah.
I feel like they're doing one of 2 things to make things more interesting, to get people excited about what a card does. They're either making 3 paragraphs on the card or they're just like dumping keywords on as much as they can to like, okay, it's going to be flying, trample, first try. I'm like, whoa.
It'll have some
like,
weird ability at the end of it that like fuels itself. And it's like, you know, the fun of Magic is finding that fuel for the card. You don't always have to make the card self-actualize. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I still can't remember everything that Questing Beast does. Like,
Good thing it's leaving standard in about
I
a
still
week.
can't remember everything that a Chroma Angel of Wrath does. And it's been 20 years. It's a lot. This is the argument. This is the Zack Snyder's Justice League argument, which is, of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League is better. They had 5.5 hours to get all of their stuff out of their brain. Part of the art of editing is editing yourself. Like, the Avacyn's Memorial is a perfect Magic card.
It's a wonderful card.
Because it's 2 lines, it tells you what it does, it is emotional, it harkens back, and it's not complicated. This is cool. It's very cool.
It's cool.
But it's also a 7th grade textbook. So, while I'm good, this is a great card, but it's too much.
Right. Like, it did, stuff like, did it need to copy the things it was exiling or whatever? Like, was that really necessary for you to think this card was interesting? Okay, let's move on here. Gathering the Townsfolk as we move out of the first pick, thanks to our sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offer the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. As we move on to Gather the Townsfolk, talking about the Gauntlets Roundup. There was an MPL event thing this weekend that also put people in world championships. Reuben, do you know exactly what's going on here? Because
vaguely. I mean, so we did have pretty much the most important Magic the Gathering event since the beginning of the pandemic happened this weekend. All of the Gauntlet events sort of came to a culmination for the current competitive Magic scene. And because we don't know what the future of competitive Magic is going to look like, this is kind of the ultimate chapter for the time being. And there was a ton of prizes given out. And of course, last week we talked about the consternation about the change in scheduling from 2 days down to 1 day. And there was a lot of fury about that. But it turns out that this event went off pretty well. There was a lot of good things that the pros had to say, not only about the event itself, but about Standard. Standard was wide and varied, which is very unusual for a Standard that's this big at the end of its lifespan. We had a lot of different types of decks, and a lot of very skillful players were near the tops of the leaderboards, which is, those invite-only events. But still, you have Kai Budde, who is the last undefeated player, the German juggernaut, the greatest of all time, who's the last undefeated player, which is super cool. Ultimately, the shindig was won by Jan Merkel, who won the Rivals Gauntlet. It was just a really, really good event and had people who are, maybe were poo-pooing competitive Magic or maybe looking elsewhere. We did have some people who were saying, this is it for me. Gregor Kowalski sent a farewell. There were some other players.
Those people will 100% be back.
Yeah, nobody ever quits Magic.
You don't quit Magic. It's cool. I mean, I appreciate it. Sort of, there's a demarcation. It's a point in the road where you're like, hey, things changed, and they certainly did. And now we have the World Championships, and like, hey, Matt Sperling's in the World Championships. That's cool. Stanislav Sivka, like that guy he's just so good at games. It's scary.
Right.
But we have our competitors now. That's cool.
Yeah. And so we have our competitors, we have our rivals. We had a little bit of an update on what the future of esports and Magic the Gathering is going to be. I'm excited to, we didn't get a direct promise of this is when it starts, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
I personally don't need this is when it starts. I am glad that there is some communication of what is potentially to come. I think it does make,
I think every month that goes by with no large events makes it harder to restart those events for a variety of reasons, logistically, and it takes time to set up, and there's planning and whatever. And so if Fandor win, we can get past all of the terribleness happening here, and we can achieve the herd and all that stuff. Goodness, the ability to just announce there's going to be a big Magic event is probably going to take us into mid to late 2022. And that's optimistic. And so yeah, the running down of this thing will happen, and then I think there is going to be sort of a building back up. And Eric Froehlich's like, I'm excited for the organized play. I'm not that excited for organized play because I know it's going to take a very long time for organized play to get where we've had organized play. It was amazing, and I 100% took it for granted. I you don't know what you got till it's gone. Holy cow, did I take for granted the GP stream next to the SDG stream next to the Pro Tour was happening next weekend, and I understood exactly how they got to that Pro Tour and the way that I could get to that Pro Tour. Man, those were the days.
You're not wrong. I mean, look, I've been disappointed by Magic the Gathering before. They've hurt me before. I'm just saying that I am less down on them hopeful right now. Yeah, I'm more hopeful than I thought that I would be after an event that had honestly just no hype leading up to it. Right? Like zero hype. I didn't watch any of it personally, but the way that I gauge it now is that I'm not in the audience to be watching these. I gauge my reaction to how good an event is by the reaction on Twitter, the reaction on Facebook, because I have a pretty wide Facebook net of friends from over the years, so it has a pretty decent reflection of what things are, and what the Reddit looks like, what the response on all those social medias look like. Right. And it was not quite so bearish. Is that the right one? Hold on. What is Bear the good one or
Bear's the bad one? Bull's
Bear's the bad one. It was not quite so bearish as it usually is.
Sure.
And furthermore, people who are oftentimes critical were like, this was fine. Like, this was a well-run event. Magic is great, and we'll be back. So, again, I've been hurt by Magic before, and I will believe it when I see it. Right?
But we all want to believe, now don't we? And we want to believe.
I'm going in with both eyes open.
Hey, man, all I'm saying. I gave them both eyes open for the Magic Pro League, and that just went.
I didn't. I
tried. All right. Well, moving on here to Pauper. There was a Pauper preliminary event, which I'm guessing is to some larger event, but there was a Pauper event, and basically in protest, many players have submitted 60 land decks, and the winner was a 60 land deck, and it was like, what is going on? Like, it was so sad. Yeah. Alex Ullman, who is like Mr. MTG Pauper, like, he was like, I mean, seriously, ... was his tweet. I tweeted like, man, I have never in my life seen any format, but definitely Pauper in a darker place. Like, it was sad. Like, it was
so. The story goes that there was one person waiting in the Pauper prelim event forever. Then 11 people jumped in with basic land decks. And in the finals, one of the basic land people asked for a concession from the guy that brought a real deck and got it.
That's crazy. So
to prove a point.
Yes.
Your format is broken. Okay, so Wizards actively acknowledged that their format was broken and that there was going to be some bannings happen. Well, on September 8th, that was yesterday, they finally showed up. Bringing up here on the screen, the September 8th, 2021 banned and restricted announcement. They banned Chatterstorm, which, if you didn't know, was a green and generic mana to make a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and it has Storm, because that's a fair mechanic, particularly in Pauper. And Sojourner's Companion, which was a 7 generic mana 4/4. This was the what's the old school one? 7 mana 4/4 affinity.
Mirror Enforcer.
Mirror Enforcer. I think it's Mirror Enforcer, but it has, which means it has affinity for artifacts and artifact land cycling of 2 generic mana. So it was a better Mirror Enforcer.
Right.
You just got on top of all your other cool, affinity cards. So you still kept all of your indestructible dual lands, affinity dual lands. They still do note that things like other decks could still be affected, and they're looking at the complexity of the metagame and waiting to see if anything changes as a result. Like, Affinity is like the default best deck now, but being the default best deck means you have people coming at you for being the best deck. So that's how the metagame will roll around that. But we definitely needed to get Chatterstorm out. We definitely need to depower Affinity. So thank God they did something.
Yeah, I don't know if I am 100. I mean, I'm glad they banned Chatterstorm, and I'm glad they banned Sojourner's Companion.
Sure.
I don't know if it's enough.
Right.
Chatterstorm certainly is very good, but and the best of the storm spells, but also we still have Galvanic Relay in the format, which I think that Storm is just broken in Pauper. I think
it's a broken mechanic.
I think you just can't have Storm cards in Pauper. I think you just can't do it. It's the name
of the broken mechanic chart. Like,
right.
It's crazy.
And Sojourner's Companion is even more of a, like, we're banning Bloodbraid out of Jund kind of situation, where the deck is still the best deck. I think that the correct choice would have been to get rid of the artifact Indestructible Taplands. But they didn't want to ban 5 cards, I guess.
And like, and Pharmacist Judge is not wrong. He says, I'm not sure if I want to applaud them when they drag their feet for so long. This right here, this is what neglect looks like. Like, we're glad you fixed it, but you truly neglected a format to the point where, like, they had to troll the crap out of you for you to finally say something. And yes, it could have been in the works for a while. I'm not saying it didn't, but you sure as hell didn't say anything when we were screaming that the house is on fire. Right. Please, God, somebody please say something about Pauper. And they just had to troll you. Like, it's nuts.
I mean, it definitely would have been nice if, like, Wizards had said that maybe that they had some interest in possibly fixing a thing, even if that, doesn't happen. But I think for the most part, from what I've heard, I mean, I don't play Pauper, but the people I know and friends that I have that do just feel like that there was just no one cared. It was just completely unsupported, and like whether it existed or not didn't matter for the format. So I think at that point you're just maybe playing house rules with friends. Like, you guys can do personal ban things. Like, I know, like, when Hoogland sometimes does tournaments, he'll like change and ban things, right? Yeah,
and
based on what he thinks.
That.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's funny, Granada there in the chat, WotC basically treats Pauper like how they treat Gatherer. And that is 100% true.
Nobody wants to touch it? That's awkward.
How about some good news, everybody? Good news. Loading Ready Run next Sunday, the first time in person, still taking precautions, since January of 2020. It's going to have a real awesome pre-release for Innistrad Midnight Hunt.
I can't wait. This is the only Magic event I look forward to, honestly. I carve out time in my schedule and I watch the pre-release. It's my favorite. I was so ecstatic when I got to go one time, but even if I never got to go, just being in the chat, just seeing the familiar faces and listening to the familiar sounds, the alerts,
Oh yeah.
It makes me happy. And I'm glad that they're finally going to get to, be back into the building that Loading Ready Run built. It's nature is healing.
Mm-hmm.
I also got to go to the Modern Horizons one, and it was a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just all around great pre-release content, and I'm excited to have it back.
Reuben and I might have went during Rivals. Okay, fine, whatever. But we picked up some pricey mythics and we didn't even know it. We weren't even aware of what was happening, how crazy, ridiculous those mythic prices were going to be.
And also, our mod and good friend Pharmacist Judge will, of course, be in the chat, being one of the people who is answering judge questions and being helpful. Big shout out. He's been working on that for longer than he's been with us. So.
Yeah. So no, this is this coming Sunday, September 12th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on Loading Ready Run's Twitch channel. So they're awesome and they're great. And this is also from those streams is where I got that, thanking all the subs and the bit givers at the end of the show, because they do that at the end of their pre-release streams. And I was like, that's a good idea. Yeah. I like that.
Yep.
So fantastic stuff there. Let's see. Do we have anything remaining? DGen Gaming, of course, is now sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com. I know this is a little navel-gazy. I don't care. It's my show. I can do what I want.
It's fine.
But Nerd
Cool
Girls,
Stuff sponsors this show, so.
Yeah, so tell us what's going on with this sponsorship.
Oh, okay. So, we talked about it a little bit in 2-ish shows ago that I started my own streaming organization to kind of make up some of the slack when a lot of the esports and other orgs are leaving Magic because of organized play being a mess. And the entire team recently got sponsored by Cool Stuff. So pretty exciting stuff.
Great.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll be able to branch out into additional sort of streamers and partners that you find and not have to necessarily go to every single individual person and work out all those deals individually. Yep. So that's awesome. And we are excited to do that as well.
Awesome.
All right, let's move on here. As we move on to Desperate Ravings, check out Alter Sleeves. You can support the show. Getting this on screen right now. You can support the show using the code MagicMikes at checkout for 5% off anything in the store. So check out altersleeves.com today. All right, let's move on here to some Desperate Ravings. There was some conversations. Aaron Forsyth in particular tweeted here. He said, we're aware of the desire to have a RADA issued to make older werewolves work with day and night. I'd say it's quite unlikely, but it's worth a discussion. Similarly, and they love to bring out this one, they did not errata all of the older slivers to be non-symmetrical when the M14 was released, despite that being simpler / better. Yeah, but you made them Predator people? That wasn't good. But you did kind of fix the wording, and I'm okay with that. But this to me, I said, look, I would not suggest changing them. I feel like this is the mark, in sort of Magic's history where the werewolves got defined in a very specific day and night mechanic, that this should have been there from the beginning. Yes. But that ultimately those old cards, like they have it all written out on them. They're all very clear about how they trigger and flip. They didn't have collector packs back then that didn't include the wording of how they flip and why, for example. So they all have that reminder text that you can use on them moving forward.
I'm fine with them keeping the way that they have them. I think that adding day-night wording to the old werewolves would be significantly clunkier than leaving them the way they are. We didn't update mono artifacts, right? We didn't reprint a bunch of random garbage to make things work going forward when they worked originally. It's fine. This is just what werewolves were when they were first printed.
Do you have any significant opinion there, Nerd Girl, on this one?
No, Reuben, I think, said just about all of it.
Yeah. It's fine. This is one of those things, I get it. I personally just feel like you'd be changing so many cards. I think you'd make so many more questions, than you would really fix any of the old ones, as it were. Well, how does so-and-so trigger now that such and such is happening? It's like, God, moving on.
Too much.
So there was a Blogatog post, and I will bring it up here on the screen so you guys can check it out with me. I was a little shocked, not the right word. I was definitely surprised. So someone said, for the people confused with what's happening with Standard, I think the simplest way is imagining that the set that normally releases in July has been moved to release in November, while the other three sets releasing close to the general time frame they would normally release at. The major goal of the change was to give the last set more time in Standard, and this change makes it go from the last set being legal for about 14 months to about 16 months, to which Mark Rosewater said correct, to which I also said, at what point in time, I'm literally in the last 10 years of Magic the Gathering, have you said to yourself, I only wish these sets could stay in Standard longer?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always in favor of faster rotation. I know that as an enfranchised player, I know that newer players want some amount of stability, particularly with the one booster pack they get to buy a week with their parents' allowance, or, I remember that. And so having a standard deck that lasts longer and not having quite so high of an upkeep cost on what I'm playing, that is a significant factor. And finding that balance between, having something that's collectible and having something that's ephemeral, is tough. With that said, I still think 16 months is way too long. That's just way too long. That's just too many months.
It's a long time.
I mean, on the flip side of what you were saying, as far as having limited amounts of funds for, card acquisition, I mean, if the longer it goes and the more sets that are actually in Standard typically makes it more expensive.
Right.
The mana base right now is absurd. I can't imagine being a new player trying to, even on Arena, buy a mana base. How many rares is it? It's just all
it's all rares. All the pathways, all the shocks, all that stuff. I mean, and then the fast lands and stuff. I mean, all that crap.
Personally, I'd rather have rotation faster with fewer sets.
Yeah.
And they tried that. And all the stores apparently lost their minds and were very unhappy about it. And F&M attendance started to suffer. And so they turned that ship right around pretty quickly, as I recall.
Yeah, fewer sets isn't going to work because they want to... The dragon that sits on the pile of gold that lives in Hasbro headquarters in Providence, Rhode Island is not going to say, oh, we can have fewer sets come out. Like, that's not going to happen.
That ain't going to work. But...
If it could be just as many sets. It's just like the rotation happens a little bit
faster
before the however many sets there are currently in standard, right?
Right.
So they can come out just as quickly.
Yeah,
I would just make that window shorter.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that, they literally, I did not expect them to create a standard 2022 queue in Arena specifically because everyone's sick and tired of playing against Ikoria and Eldraine crap. Like,
yep.
Why do you think you made that queue? Because they wanted him to stay in standard longer? Like, what?
Yeah, they haven't made a replacement for block.
They really haven't.
And I think that's the major concern. They need to there needs to be something that's less popular than modern, less popular than standard, but more popular than just like random formats in between. They need to have a historic for standard 2022.
All right. Well, one last thing here I thought was interesting, which wasn't quite ravings, but I still thought it was neat. One of the things that he posted was about the most requested planes and the least requested planes. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. The most requested planes include Lorwyn, Kaladesh, Alara, Tarkir, and New Phyrexia. Absolutely. And the least requested is Mercadia, Rabia, which is Arabian Nights, Olgrotha, which is Homelands, and Amonkhet, which is... Does anyone care about Amonkhet?
I mean, we've had an Amonkhet set relatively recently, so... also, it was Nicol Bolas's plane. I mean, we've had... Did
we care?
We did request an Egyptian-style plane for a long time.
And we got it. And it was...
We got two. We got two of them.
It was
fine. I
didn't love the drafting format.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I'm
a huge proponent of Lorwyn. I'm a Lorwyn fanboy. I would love to go back and have a slightly less complicated set to explore. But they will never go back because there's no humans there. It's as simple as that. That's just what it is.
Because of Lorwyn?
Lorwyn, yeah.
Humans don't believe that. I do not believe it. We're getting cyber samurai planeswalkers.
There's humans there.
You think they can go back to Lorwyn, bro?
A big problem with the sales for Lorwyn was there was no people that fans could attach to. I've heard this story multiple times from people at Wizards.
Sure.
Several times over.
Interesting.
So, if it's apocryphal, then I'm mistaken.
Also note that Lorwyn had the first planeswalkers just kind of in there. They weren't a part of the story. They had no interactions with the other characters. They had nothing to do with Kithkin or whatever. It was just, here's the first 5 planeswalkers. Right. We're going to be over here telling this other story. Now that you can literally integrate the storyline with the storybook type of world, it's just a question of not being Throne of Eldraine, essentially. Right. But I love Lorwyn.
I am also a huge Olgrotha apologist. I think that the story of Homelands is one of the most fascinating stories that's ever been put to cards. But we'll never go back there because Homelands was the worst set ever, and no one cares anymore.
2 customer service guys that said they had a set.
The story was great. The story was really interesting. It was essentially like that scene in Lord of the Rings when the hobbits show up in Bree, but for a whole set. That's what the story, it was just this wild, gross medieval town with cutthroats and magic, and elves and dark things. And it was a cool setting, but we'll never go back there. So it's fine.
All right. So I'm going to touch real fast on some splash damage here. Particularly, there's a YouTube video. It's kind of long, but you know what? Sometimes I'm actually really more excited about longer YouTube videos than I am shorter videos because, they're going to go all the way and, do the deep analysis and research and stuff. Well, a guy named Carl Jobst, who I've been subscribed to for a minute and likes to call his viewers absolute legends, is terrific and has made a video. I've linked it here in the chat. It's going to be in the show notes. It's called Exposing Fraud and Deception in the Retro Video Game Market. And this is coming and tried become a little bit for Magic. Here's the main crux of it. It's still a fantastic video, but the main crux of it is that a grading company is owned by the auction company, who is also owns the video games that it is auctioning off, and has sometimes had people buy it for them, or they buy it back themselves at a higher price. And so they'll put stuff up because they want the headlines. You saw the headlines, $1 million for Super Mario Brothers, right? Who bought it for $1 million? Isn't it weird that the same two or three guys own all three of those companies working in tandem to grade these things, who are giving grades to video games that look like crap? They're giving them 9.8s to stuff with like clear rips in the plastic and stuff. Like, it's rough and it's bad and it's manipulation 101. And, you know, there's all these people trying to sort of like get in on, you know, a Legend of Zelda that's now worth 30 grand or whatever. Well, is it? Is it really? Because after a while, you might just be manipulated into thinking it is, and it's not.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, man. This is going to lead to I'm hoping this leads to an FTC investigation, and then, like...
It really should. Like, feel free to take a look at that. The guy lays out all the evidence of the, you know, the filings that he found for the SEC and stuff like that. Like, this is real. There's a bunch of crazy rich people who want to get crazier and richer, and they'll do whatever it takes.
Right. I don't know anything about this kind of stuff. If you are interested in this, I'm gonna say Mark Nestico probably knows about this kind of stuff. Because he does some video game, like, buying and selling.
There for about a year, or maybe a little bit less, but there for around 2016 or so, I got into the video game collecting, reselling hobby stuff, where I would try to go find rare stuff and flip it, or old video game systems and flip those and whatever. And I did some of that stuff. You know, I got some really awesome games that I found out of the middle of nowhere that I got a cool profit on. It was a cool little hobby for a while. It's just a hobby. You're not going to get rich at it. And even this is just a bunch of weird market manipulation. It was a hobby, and it should have been seen as a hobby, and it should have stayed a hobby. No, your Super Mario Brothers is not worth $1 million. They want you to believe that because every newspaper will run with it, but that's not real. You know, that's they want to make you think it is. So it's weird, it's freaky, it's scary, and you got to be careful out there as we turn the corner to the finisher. On September 5th, 2006, the very first video was uploaded by yours truly to YouTube on the Mr. Orange YouTube channel. The Magic Show #1 Cheap, quote unquote, was my very first foray into the glamorous world of Magic the Gathering content creation. It's been a long, strange 15 years since then, but I got some gas left in the tank. So tell me, what should Mr. Orange YouTube's next big project be, Reuben?
The very first, and still the OG, was the Magic Show. Old and new players alike gravitated to the goofiness, the fun, and the pageantry of the Magic Show. And we could use a little bit of that right now for every Magic boomer's favorite game. So get ready for Mr. Orange Presents The Flesh and Blood Show.
We're bringing it old school. I like
Interesting.
It. Nerd girl?
All right, I do my own set reviews, but I have never done a complete set review along the side of the two of you. So my pitch would be to reanimate the idea of the three of us, because I clearly feel the need to record even more content than I already am.
You're just not putting in enough hours.
Yeah,
I hate to tell you. You're not. The nose needs to go to the grindstone. You understand?
I'm kind of a slacker. It's true.
That's right.
Well, 15 years is a lot of years. I am an old man. Really, Reuben? A decrepit pile of skin, bones, and Diet Cherry Pepsi. A dried out husk. Really? A dried out husk floating down the Tennessee River. And oh, by the way, I don't read the joke ahead of time. He is correct. But being as old hat as I am, I'm looking into something new and different. So be on the lookout for the newest, hottest, most original Evan Irwin project. Mr. Orange presents the pre-release, sponsored by LoadingReadyRunStuff.com. Yeah. And that
Reuben, please don't do that to me.
It was an Evan-focused joke. I had to troll
no, it was great. I
with
loved
the
it.
teleprompter.
All the way.
I loved it. I'm just sad. I'm just scared now.
And that ends another live episode of Magic Mics. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you. See ya.
We'll move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AlterSleeves.com, my co-host, Nerdgirl, and Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online on our Discord, twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.